Hi, I'm Chef Nicholas Lodge. Welcome to my studio here in Atlanta, Georgia, in the United States of America. I'm very happy you join me in this video where I'm going to talk about my FlexiPaste by Sugarin. Now, this unique product is suitable to make flowers, but also has lots of other application in decorations for cakes and also for dressing figures with figure modeling when you want flexibility. Now, the product comes in several options as far as packaging size. There is the 200-gram pack, and this is available in the white, and then also comes in the three colors, which I'm going to talk about in a short while. So these are the current colors that are available. We are working on more at the moment, so there will be other color added to the range. This is the 200-gram pack, which is just under 8 ounces. And this is good for example, especially with maybe the pink and red where you don't use as much, or you're blending with white to make pale pink roses or cherry blossoms and things like that. And then we have the 400-gram pack. So the 400-gram pack again comes in white and all of the colors. And this is obviously good if you're using a larger amount of paste, or especially with cake decor, if you're doing more decorations on cakes like bows and things like that. Obviously this is a more economical way to buy the product. And then it is available also in a 1600-gram pack, which includes 4 400-gram packs. So for instructors and tutors, and if obviously you use a lot of product in, say, a bakery. So that's the packaging size. The packaging is in a Mylar style bag. And this style bag obviously is very convenient, and actually you can, I use also the Mylar bags. You can buy these bags like on Amazon, online stores, for storing when I'm mixing small amounts of the paste. So if I was, for example, going to make a pale pink for cherry blossoms or roses, I would use these type of bags to obviously, once I've taken the white out and the pink, I would then use those to obviously blend. So when you are opening the package, all you're going to do is just going to cut along the line there. So just going to cut along the line. So then, of course, that accesses the product. It's going to be thrown away. And then, of course, you can open the pouch. Just make sure you cut, so just below the seal, you can do a second cut. But obviously, make sure you cut above the actual seal line. So then, obviously, it will keep the paste in perfect condition. And this is an excellent way to keep the paste, obviously, when we open the pack. So when you open the pack, then you're ready to use the product straight from the pack. What's really nice about these bags is then they obviously, you just seal them, and it's going to keep the paste very, very fresh, and it's never going to dry out. So excellent packaging. And so next I'm going to talk about a little bit about the properties of the product, and then I'm going to talk about showing you how to color, mix colors, and then go on to show you how to use it. So the first thing with the product is this is starch-based paste. So it's very different to regular flour paste. And of course, if you just need in a small amount, you can just break off what you need from the pack. So just break that off from the pack, or of course you could take out the whole piece and then cut off what you need. So you take the product out of the pack. Now, this product is obviously stays flexible for a month or longer than a month when making flowers and decorations. So this has a lot of advantages when making, for example, like bows. They stay flexible, so the tails, you can get that sort of elevation, look natural like fabric, but also for flowers and things, especially when we do flowers that have layers of petals, which I'm going to talk and show you some details of that in the next part. But the paste, first of all, has a very nice floral fragrance. It actually has got a lavender and rose flavor and fragrance in it, so an extract, and so it's a very sort of nice sort of smell when making flowers. And it's a totally edible product. I mean, it's just, as I said, the difference is this is starch-based, whereas traditional flour paste and gum paste is obviously sugar-based. So this has a lot of advantages as far as the texture is very, very smooth and fine. So for fine flour making, and as I said, for lots of other things like dressing figures, you can roll extremely thin. It has a lot of structural integrity as well. Now the paste, of course, if you were making white flowers, so if you were going to be making like, for example, like white gardenias here. Of course, you know, the white is a lovely sort of white, natural white color. So for a lot of times we do it white. Of course, also the colors come, so just to show you, these are the colors. So these are the three colors that are available. So this is the poppy red, and this is the poppy red color. So obviously the poppy red, this is a great color for, of course, poppies, but also for example, I'm going to show you making a rosebud, red roses, red camellias, obviously Christmas time poinsettias, flowers like that. With all of the colors, the advantage is you can take a little tiny bit of poppy red and add to white, and that will turn it into just a very, very pale pink, and also, like, for example, a mid-sized pink. So in fact, you could use the red to create pink roses, cherry blossoms, and other flowers. Tonal wise, obviously that is the red color. So the pink is obviously a paler version of that. And it's very nice. You can take it, this almost would do as a sort of a blush color. And so again, for roses and for other flowers, it's a very nice color. The peony pink, this is obviously more towards a purple, all right? And so again, this can be made paler. So you can do a paler version of that. And then you can, of course, make it a little bit darker as well. But as you can see, the difference is, so the tone of the pink is a different sort of shade of pink, because one is diluted with white with red, one is diluted with white with magenta, the peony pink, like a magenta color. Also there is the green. This is the foliage green, and the foliage green, and remember these come in the 200 gram and the 400 gram packs as well. So again, this is a really beautiful color for foliage. And of course, you can make this a little bit paler, or you could go down to a very, very soft green, all right? So when we do certain flowers and make them in this color, like lovely color for, say, pale green hydrangeas. And if you actually mix the pink and red together, so if you mix equal amounts of those, this makes like almost a fuchsia color, okay? So you can actually mix equal quantities of red and pink together, or to the proportion that you require. Plan is a little later, once we've introduced some new colors, I will be doing a color chart to give you sort of ideas, but it's very, very strong base colors. So using these strong base colors enables us to obviously achieve different shades. Now, when we do that, there are two ways to do it, just a little bit by, obviously you can do that by eye. So I'm just going to take here some of the peony pink. Okay, so you take out a little bit of the peony pink. Make sure you seal the bag up well when you finish with it. Just run your finger down the bag. That will just obviously have the seam. So of course, you could just, like, if you wanted to make a rose, you could just take the amount of white that you think you're going to need. You take your peony pink, for example here, just mix this through. We can use a little bit of vegetable fat or vegetable shortening, or solid coconut oil. It must be vegetable, not animal. Here in the United States, like brands like Crisco is a solid vegetable shortening. In England, brands like White Flora or Trex. But as I said, and obviously in other countries like India, you can use coconut oil, solid coconut oil, but it must be a vegetable-based product. So you can use a little bit of that on your fingers and just mix that through. And you see how that blends through to give you a lovely pink. And it integrates really quickly. Adding a base color to the white is much quicker and easier than, for example, starting off with trying to color with gel colors or things. So you see how you get this beautiful color. Now, other things you can use, for example, this is a product that I developed for Katie Sue Designs in the UK. This is called a measuring mold. It was developed for air drying clay. And so this product actually is used for air drying clay, which similar to obviously sugar paste and gum paste and FlexiPaste. It obviously comes in pre-colored colors. And as you can see, this gives you some ideas as to some ombre colors. So the magenta air drying clay is really a very, very similar color to the peony pink, obviously FlexiPaste. So what this means is you actually use this mold. So this is really a more precise way, and especially if you want to reproduce colors, you can obviously use the formulas on here, or obviously be able to reproduce that time and time again, exactly the same color. So here, so with your FlexiPaste, so I'm just going to get just to show you this, I'm going to get some white. Now I've already got some white here, And then we've got the magenta color, which is like the peony pink, as I said. So, and remember, if you combine the magenta, the peony pink, and the red, you'll get more of a fuchsia pink, all right? So sort of a hot pink color. But what we would do there is if you wanted to make, like for example, if you were making cherry blossoms, and you wanted to make just sort of the palest of pink, like say this sort of shade pink, then or with the red or with the peony pink, so poppy red or peony pink, you can use this guide with the FlexiPaste. And so let's say, for example, I wanted to make this color for cherry blossoms. You use a number 10 of the peony pink and a number 1 of white. So what we would do is literally going to take my measure mold here, and you're just going to fill this mold up level. Now use my little flexi scraper. So you see that is actually the number 1 of the peony pink. And then I will take a number 1 of white. Again, you're just going to cut that off here like that. So you just, that's going to go level onto the mold. Just make sure that you press with the scraper. So you see how we got 1 of each. Now we're going to take those out of the mold. Now, of course, if you need more than this, you could do 2 or 3 whites, number 1, and 2 or 3 pinks, number 10. And then all we're going to do is then we would just mix this through the product here. You see, it's just going to go through. And this is going to make the palest pink. So for like a cherry blossom where you want a really, really soft pink. These colors are also very light stable, meaning that if you're making these colors, so here you see I've got a softest of pink. If you wanted it a little bit darker, obviously you could do a bigger amount. But they're just showing you to do it with a more mathematical approach to it, as obviously, or you can guesstimate the color. So once you've got your paste colored, now the paste is a really nice consistency. It's a lovely consistency for working, all right? And as I said, but the other thing with the product is if you wanted the paste, a little bit softer, like for example for certain flowers, you can also add a little bit of water to it. So what you can do there is you can just take a little dish of water, all right? So you can then just take your color and your paste, white or that, and just add a little bit of water to it, and that reconstitutes moisture back into it. Now, not unlike normal flour paste or gum paste, also when every time you open the bag, obviously the air is going to get into it. Also, when you are using product and you're rolling it out to, for example, make flowers, you take the scraps and you put them back in the bag, eventually it's going to tighten a little bit, so the addition of water is what we do. Now, this is obviously a vegan product, so it doesn't contain any eggs that a lot of commercial flour paste and homemade flour paste and gum paste have. So in those we sometimes add egg white to make it loose, a little softer, but with this FlexiPaste, just add water to it. And just mix that through, and then of course, once you've got your paste colored, you then put that in your little bag. And I said, if you're going to obviously do colored paste, you can use a small bag like this and put this in. This keeps it in perfect condition. It's like a mini version of what the paste is packaged in. So next I'm going to show you a little bit about working with the paste and what makes this different to other products on the market. So flour making, what is really amazing about the FlexiPaste is the fact that it stays flexible. And this shows the type of flours that really traditionally you would often have issues with the traditional flour or gum paste, meaning that the petals are going to get very brittle. So as you can see, this rose, actually this was made about 4 months ago, but you see how the petals still have flexibility on them. And this, for example, rose here, again, you can see how they have flexibility. So the really great thing about the product is when you come to arrange the flowers, when you're putting together flowers and foliage, you won't ever have any problems with breakage because the paste is going to be a little bit like putting together silk flowers or fresh flowers. The way I sort of compare this to, for example, air drying clay that I work with a lot. Air drying clay, this is like an edible version of air drying clay. And you can see here that this actually was made in September 2020 2020. And so you can see how the petals are still flexible. So that is sort of over 6 months ago that was made. So the petals, the flowers, are never going to get really, really hard. But the thing is the structural integrity of the product means that if, for example, the weather changes a little bit and for example, like it got humid, or if you're doing this in outside, the petals will still hold up okay. They will soften a little bit, but they will still, their structural integrity will stay as is. All right. But another example is here, you know, like on the gardenia. See, if that making this in gum paste or flower paste, traditional paste, would be very, very sort of susceptible to getting broken because the petals are suspended out. So flowers like sunflowers, gardenias, roses, Gerber daisies, all of those flowers is really wonderful because the petals still stay flexible. All right. So as I said, and also when you have fine detail, like for example, like on the calyx, you can touch that and it's actually bouncy. So that is really where also the paste works really, really well for those type of flowers. And then also on, for example, foliage, when we're doing foliage, like for example, this is a delphinium leaf, you can see the detail is really, really fine on there, and you see that that is not going to break. So when you come to dust the flowers or handle them and put them in arrangement, you won't have issues with them breaking. So on calyxes like the gardenia I've just shown you, again, a little sort of calyx on there, so it still has flexibility. So unlike traditional paste, which is very brittle. But for fine detailed leaves, like here, Dusty Miller, flowers like that, it really works wonderful. Also, when you're doing flowers, like this is sort of from a dogwood, but again, you can see how the petals still stay flexible. So even flowers like, say, hydrangeas or flowers you make in what we call set petals, meaning the petals are set in position, not individually wired, it has a lot of flexibility. You also can use it, of course, for cake as well. This piece was from a demonstration I gave prepped for when we launched the paste in April. And these actually were made, these two pieces here, actually this was made on February the 5th. On February the 5th, 2021, we're now in June. And as I said, this paste is still, as you can see, is flexible. This is made in a Katie Sue design mold. So again, you see like the chain. Now, of course, it's sort of dried a lot more than it was like a month ago. But if you made this, you can leave it a couple of days, paint it. Then if you were doing, say, a Chanel purse and use this for the chain, you still be able to sort of drape this wherever you want it to go. Other examples, this was actually made in the live. When the paste launched on March the 17th, I did a little live. This is the bow that I made on March the 17th, and you can see that the tails of the bow are still flexible. But you see how they actually are sticking out from the cake. So it gives a much more lifelike appearance when you're doing dressing figures. You could actually have your bows, sort of the tails of the bows elevated. And as I said, it gives a sort of really, really nice look to the cake. All right, it's not as stiff looking. Traditionally, you couldn't do this with normal flour paste or gum paste, and if you use something like, say, pastillage, what would typically happen is it would get very brittle, and if you just touched it, it would just snap, whereas you can see this has got flexibility. Now, but one thing that's important with the product is you use Flexi Glue. This is on my nicholaslodge.in website, which is coming up the link here. This is called Flexi Glue. There is a YouTube video of how to make this. It's very easy. It's like making a gravy or a sauce or a custard. You're going to sort of, in a microwave, you're going to cook some of the Flexi paste with some water. You're making almost a roux, and then you're adding more water to it and bringing it to the boil, to just like making a custard or a sort of a roux or a gravy. And this is a shelf-stable product, all right? So you just keep this out room temperature, and we use this. And this glue I developed, it stays flexible as well, because in traditional flower making, if, for example, you had a petal, like for example on this gardenia, if I traditionally used in flour paste like egg white or edible glue, what would happen when that dries? It dries very brittle, whereas the Flexi Glue actually will stay flexible with the petal. Because in traditional, if I had used egg white on the Flexi paste, when I do that, what would happen is the glue would give way, and that means the two parts would separate. So when making roses and things, the Flexi Glue will keep your petals flexible as well. And also for dressing figures or making bows, and if you move them, the glue is not going to obviously give way. Now, when you are using the product, you know, also for even little small flowers like this delphinium flower, you can see the petals are flexible, all right? So when you come to dust the flowers, that's the other thing that makes this very unique, is when you dust the flowers with the dusting powder, which is in another DVD I have done for my Nicholas Lodge Dust by Sugarin. This means that you can enable to, again, petals are not going to break because when you touch them with dust in the brush, you obviously need to have this flexibility. So I'm just going to show you the basics of, as I'm making a rosebud, just to show you a little bit about things you can do that you can't do with normal flower paste or gum paste. So I have here some floral tape. Now, full tutorials of these are available with my Flower Pro. Flower Pro is my range in collaboration with Katie Sue Designs, and I have over 60 YouTube videos. It's on KatieSueDesigns.com/Flower Pro. And they will have all the Flower Pro videos. You can watch a full tutorial on, obviously, the roses, for example. But I'm going to go around with floral tape here 10 times around the end of the wire. I'm going to then take a pair of pliers. I'm just going to fold this over. And then I'm going to go around 15 times. It's just sort of how I do the floral tape bud. But just wanted to show you a few things that make this unique, this paste. Now, with my Flower Pro, I use a size guide. This is available like in the books. It's also on a download, a cardboard one you can cut around. And this is a plastic size guide that Katie Sue used. So this is what I use in all my classes for flower making. So here I'm going to use a number 10 small size. That means the number 10. Now, this is the poppy red. Now, of course, this makes a beautiful poinsettia, makes a beautiful red rose. I'm going to show you in my other video on dusting how to enhance this with a darker color like a ruby and an aubergine color. But of course, if you wanted a sort of more of a blood red colored rose, you could add a little bit of purple and chocolate gel color to this, or a little bit of like a burgundy color as well. So as I explained, we're just going to touch your finger to condition the paste. And that just conditions your paste. Make this into a smooth ball. But for things like figure modeling, it's also beautiful. You don't have that cracks that you have with a lot of brands of fondant, where the it's very dense. But remember, if you wanted it softer, okay, you can of course add water to it as well. Now with the glue, with the Flexi glue, I have this in a little container. I have a little pencil eraser on the top of that. I'm just gonna, now it's opaque. It's sort of, when I show you on the petals, it almost goes on a little bit like glue, like a PVA school glue. And I generally just sort of, you can keep the lid off of that while you're not working with it. At the end of the day, put that into a pot. I keep my towel, my little washcloth, my flannel towel, wet towel, keep the brush into there, just stops it sort of drying. And then I'm going to just insert that into the ball of paste. Just mold this around the bottom. You can use a little bit of cornstarch. Make this into a basic cone shape like this. This is my rose cone. So there's 3 sizes on here. I'm using the medium size cone. So all I do is I just rotate this around in there. And you see the excess paste it doesn't need is going to just be removed with a pair of scissors. And of course, this means you get a perfect cone every time. So you get a perfect size for your rose. Just mold around the bottom. Okay. And when I make my roses, now the other unique thing about the product, the FlexiPaste, is the fact that you have plenty of working time. So those of you watching who maybe are fairly new to flower making, there's not that same urgency you have with a lot of brands of flower paste and gum paste, or even homemade paste. It's sort of very, you can leave it out on the table, 15, 20 minutes, it will be fine. So we're going to now pinch. So here I'm going to use my thumb and my finger. I'm going to pinch with my thumb and my finger. So what I'm doing is I'm creating a sort of a little bit like a fish tail. All right, so we want like a square end onto that. So just going to pinch that sort of square. So you see you're just going to make like a square end onto here. I'm going to use my, this is my Ultimate Petal Veiner, my Flower Pro Ultimate Petal Veiner. It doesn't matter which side you use for this. But you think of obviously almost vacuuming the floor or mopping the floor. So you're holding it like this. And then what I'm going to do is going to use a cosmetic sponge either a cosmetic sponge or cosmetic wedge. I would just hold this. I'm just going to press the cosmetic sponge onto paste. It takes the vein in beautifully. It works wonderful with my Flower Pro line of products, okay? And whether you do just traditional flower making with cutters and veiners or use the Flower Pro concept, obviously it works wonderful. So when you take that off, you see how you can get this lovely vein in. So it takes the vein in very, very well. Turn it over so the vein is away from you. I'm going to take the right hand side and I'm going to tuck that in, and I'm going to roll the left hand side of the petal around and use a little bit of glue if needed, just to that little flap. And that will give you the first part of your rose. And you just, if you are needing to open that out or to level it out so it's straight, you can just use your little companion tool, and that will go into the middle. So then you would continue. So next we're going to take a little bit of paste. I'm going to roll this out. So again, usually I condition the paste with a little bit of vegetable fat shortening, coconut oil. And use a little cornstarch onto this. I'm going to roll the paste out. Now for my classes, when I teach all of my classes and all of my instructions, I usually use a pasta machine. All right, so I use a pasta attachment and roll this paste out, number 6 on the pasta machine. I'm just showing you this freehand today, but also just want to, just to show you here. But see the paste you can roll so thin when you're dressing figures or whatever, can roll it again, because the pasta machine only goes down to number 8 size. But you see how this is so thin, and so it pleats beautifully. You can make pleats and things. So when you're doing, you know, little ruffles and things like that, you can sort of really roll it very, very thin. All right, but unlike, again, a lot of paste, it has a lot of structural integrity, which means that when you roll it really thin, it doesn't start breaking up. So I'm going to roll this out. Said I just usually put this through my pasta machine, and then of course that will give me my thickness I need. I'm going to use a cutter here. This is just using a blossom cutter, because I want to show you a little bit about like covering stems and about blending with a wet finger. So you see how we roll this out, and I generally just keep my little scraps of paste under the pot. But this is also where I was explaining in the introduction that, like, you know, like if you do that a lot of times, you roll it out, you take your little scraps, eventually your paste can toughen a little bit, so you just dip it in water and just use the water to soften it. Now you can, if you had a large quantity that you wanted to soften, what actually I do is put this into a little plastic bag, not a Mylar bag, because they're aluminum, so you don't microwave those. Put it into a little plastic bag, just put it in the microwave 5 or 10 seconds, and that's going to soften it. And then you can, actually what I do is normally just spray a little bit of water or put a little bit of water in the bag and mix it in the bag, and that will just soften it down to get the right consistency. I'm going to just take 2 petals here, because I'm just going to do sort of the basics of a little bud. And here, I'm going to take place these on to my little mat like this, and take the veiner. But as I say, it's the perfect consistency, so it takes the detail really well. I'm going to press this on, so this will just vein the petals in here. So you get a beautiful veining on your petals here, like so. Going to lift these off. So you see your vein is beautiful on that. Just take these off here, like so. And of course you can use traditional method of using a balling tool. So one method we use when we soften is using a balling tool. You soften around the top, just doing a little bit of the bud around this, all right? And then another alternative method we can use is using my companion tool, which do this like we would do sometimes fondant ruffles. So I'm just doing this at an angle. That's also another way to soften. Now the side you soften, that would go on the inside, and because then obviously when you soften, especially with a ball tool, you're going to raise the vein a little bit. I'm going to take our, and here you'll be able to see the flexi glue. As I said, it goes on a little bit opaque. All right, so it goes on a little bit opaque color there. So you put glue all the way around to the bottom of the spiral. And then you take your pedal and you're just going to line the pedal up. So where the little, like the fishtail here, where that finishes, going to wrap that around. And then the next fishtail will then, next one will go inside. So they will create like a yin and a yang. So you see the petals go around like this. All right, we take a little bit more of the flexi glue, put on the petal here, and you're going to mold this around the base. So you're just going to mold that around the base here, like so. And then you're going to just trim off the excess paste. All right, so once you put that on, it's going to give you a rosebud. Now, of course, on a rose, all right, this part here is going to be covered with a calyx. So you can, obviously this will be covered with a calyx, all right, but when we make flowers, like for example, when we're doing flowers like tulips or orchids or flowers that don't have a calyx, what we can do with that's unique with the FlexiPaste is actually using a wet finger. You can actually use this, and this area here, you're going to use your wet finger there, and then with your wet finger, you can actually just use your finger to blend this in. So using a wet finger, so you see that will give you a totally invisible join. So when you are doing flowers where you're adding petals, especially petals like roses and that, enables you to be able to just use a wet finger and you'll get a beautiful finished seam. This is a technique we use in cold porcelain and air drying clay, but on normal sugar-based pastes, what they will actually do is, of course, it will just dissolve it and become very sticky, but this just evaporates. And as I said, that gives you a beautiful, as I said, finish to the back of your flower. And you just let that dry. Now, with the air drying clay, obviously air drying clay, which is similar, the petals just stay there. And it's the same with the FlexiPaste. The petals, when you position them, you don't usually ever have any issues with the petals flopping back. Of course, sometimes with open flowers, you're going to hang them upside down a little bit to dry. But this paste never dries really hard, so unlike, again, traditional flower paste or gum paste where you would then let this dry, literally I could put the calyx on this in about 10 minutes. So you don't have the same amount of drying time. I use a food dehydrator. Food dehydrator is really good. I set this at 45 centigrade or 115 Fahrenheit, and you just put the petals into the food dehydrator for sort of an hour, 90 minutes, and they will dry and be totally, as I said, okay to use. So when you are, for example, making flowers, you know, if you made a flower and, for example, the petals are a little bit too dried up, sometimes when you dry flowers upside down, or also, like for example, now with the obviously FlexiPaste, if you left the flower drying like that, what would happen is if obviously it's not 100% dry, it's going to flatten on the side there. So usually I recommend either hanging them or standing them into a block of foam like this, a cake dummy or a block of foam, and obviously let things dry. So the air is obviously drying around them. Now you can also, if a petal does, for example, become out of place, meaning it's not exactly where you want it, what you can also do is you can use a clothes steamer. And taking a clothes steamer, you can actually just steam the flowers. This is again a technique we use in cold porcelain. So you can actually then, for example, these petals are quite set, but you could, for example, just sort of set that in steam, and that will actually soften it so that you can then, for for example, bend that petal back. You see, so you could, so for example, again, on certain flowers, like you might make an orchid and you want the petal to be a little bit more back, so you can just steam it, and then you just literally gonna just work that back to the stage you want it to be at, and then you just will continue drying. So you can actually re-steam them after you've made them if they were, for example, too closed up. And as far as storing the flowers, when you make the flowers, ideally you want a fairly stable environment. Now in Atlanta, where I live, obviously in the summertime it's it's very hot and humid, but we have high humidity most of the year. But I work in air-conditioned environment, but even, for example, having a fan on, just an air circulation. The thing with FlexiPaste, like really a lot of other sugar-based pastes as well, it doesn't like to have a sudden change of environment. So, for example, like if you have, you're working in an air-conditioned environment and you're making a fondant, a sugar paste cake, and you then take it outside into a garden wedding, it's going to sweat. The same thing will happen with flowers. It will soften a little bit. But the FlexiPaste is made that, as I said, it will, as I said, soften, but you won't lose the shape. All right. So you can see these petals are soft. All right, and they're still soft. But the thing is that they're not going to lose their shape. They're not going to flop down. They will just stay soft. All right. But the thing with is if, for example, you work in, those of you in India, where a lot of times you switch the air conditioning off in your workroom, that, for example, is a sudden drastic change of temperature. So ideally you want to sort of, as I said, if you are working on flowers or you have flowers, trying to keep them in a room that's a controlled environment, or as I said, like, for example, a dehydrator, food dehydrator, that's a really great way to store the things, but even just a fan will really help as well. And you can see then the sort of the petals will, but these will firm up. I sort of steamed that to sort of show you that, as I said, those are quite floppy. All right, but as I said, you could hang that upside down, and then, as I said, literally, like in a couple of hours, in a sort of, the petal we just steamed will firm up again, and will be perfect to do. But you see, like, this is something you can do with, obviously, FlexiPaste. You can't do with, as I said, normal flower paste and gum paste, because the petals do stay soft. It means that you're also going to arrange, when you're arranging the flowers, you won't, as I said, have any issues with breakage that we often get on flowers like roses or gardenias, especially daisy family, that happens that. And this is, for example, this was done about 6 weeks ago. This is showing you the stem. So you see, like, for example, then, if you made your tulips 6 weeks later, you can then bend the stem how you want it to go. When you're putting the arrangement on the cake, you could bend that back. But you see, it doesn't crack, it stays flexible. So you see, I can bend that whatever shape I wanted it to go into for the stem. So there's a lot of advantages as far as arranging your flowers, making it easier to do, but also the fact that, as I said, it's very, very durable. And as I said, will help you with putting flowers together without having any drama or breakage. So remember, check out the website nicholaslodge.in, and on there is some frequently asked questions about the FlexiPaste. Remember, also there is the PDF download of the Flexi Glue for you to make, and also the YouTube video of how to make the Flexi Glue. It's really easy, as I said, just with a microwave and water and Flexi Glue. That's all you need. And I would recommend that over anything else when you're attaching petals and making bows and construction of figure models, using obviously FlexiPaste as your base. We've dealt with some coloring, so remember, of course, you can use powder colors or yellow paste colors to color obviously the FlexiPaste as well, so just as you would for any other flower paste or gum paste. As far as we've discussed about drying, trying to keep, once your pieces are dry, obviously you need to keep them in a controlled environment, ideally, as I said, sort of an air-conditioned space or somewhere that's dry. Those of you who live in the UK, a lot of you have, airing cupboards and obviously areas of the house where it's going to be dry. And also drastic change in temperature, like you have air conditioning on and then you switch the air conditioning off. Now, generally speaking, the paste is going to be fine, but the thing is also you just need to ideally like hang flowers upside down, so obviously they're not going to get soft, all right? You know, these are issues that we sometimes have to deal with. I mean, when I teach all over the world, I'm dealing with different climatic conditions. But FlexiPaste is really a game changer as far as like for making flowers. And as I said, in classes where I've been using this, the students absolutely love it, not being able to have to worry about breakage, you know, when you're doing things that are very fragile. And as I said, flowers that when you put them together are not going to shatter because their petals get very dry and brittle. So this is the first of a little instructional DVD. So check out my other DVD on using my Nicholas Lodge range by Sugar and Dusting powders. See you soon. Sweet wishes.